Great. Okay, so this is the fifth week in this series of classes on developing a good heart, and this fifth class, this fifth topic, is on what's called developing a supreme good heart, and that's obviously I have to explain what I would mean by a supreme good heart. It has a uh, very specific implication that I'll share, but these last 5 weeks, we've sort of been looking at a sequence of minds that all build up around this topic of how to develop a good heart. Now, when we say developing a good heart, I think everybody understands the difference between goodwill and malice. For example, if you have a bad heart or an evil heart, or, it's on one end of the spectrum. So we naturally have a good heart towards the people that we like. But of course, if I were to say, who do you like? You would give me a list of like, oh, maybe close friends, partner, whatever else. Now, if I were to ask you, who are the people that you tend to get in the worst fights with? Um, you might give me the same list of people, right? Sometimes the people that we're closest to, we get very attached to them. They make us feel good because we have a good experience when we're with them. But generally, whenever anything makes us feel good, we develop a kind of possessiveness around it and a kind of controlling behaviors around it. And if it does something that makes us not feel good, we tend to get more upset and angrier, for example, than we would if, for example, a complete stranger didn't do something we wanted them to do. So our good heart normally is a little bit fickle, right? So our relationships, our close relationships, normally a little bit fickle depending on how we're feeling and how other people are making us feel. Um, when we are when we are uh, but as well, how much do we have concern or consideration for anybody else, people outside of our immediate social circle? Of course, we we would want everyone to have a good intention towards us, and to be concerned about our welfare and not harm us. We always have that same consideration towards others? And so that's this topic of actually developing a good heart, that it is something that we can develop the same way we can develop our intelligence, the same way we can develop our peace of mind, the same way we can develop our physical strength. You can develop a good heart intentionally. And there are different levels at which we can do this. And we've been building up. The first of these is just developing some warm heart and feeling of closeness towards others. There's a mind known as affectionate love or just friendliness. And we do this by recollecting the kindness of others, recollecting the benefit that we've received from them, um, or developing some special feeling of having instead of feeling that they're a stranger, feeling that they're just like us in some way. That's a way we can feel close to others. On that basis, the second uh, aspect of developing a good heart is sort of the critically important one, is called learning to cherish others. Learning to cherish others means learning to see others as important or valuable and seeing their happiness and their freedom as important. So we know that how much we value things can change all the time. If you look at the stock market, right, this, the way people are valuing a certain company or a certain commodity, and you see how fickle that is, how variable it is. It is as variable as our feelings. If you had a graph of your feelings state through the day, through the week, through the year, kind of going up and down, and so forth. The stock market reflects people's collective feelings about companies, to collective degree of optimism or pessimism, for example. So the values of things are not fixed. Nothing has a fixed value. We imbue things with value by caring about them. And so uh, you may not care much about your health, until you get sick, at which point you care a lot about your health and it's the most valuable thing to you. So we can learn to value the default. Our default is valuing ourself more than others or anyone else. Moving out from that, we then tend to value our friends, our family, those who make us feel good, maybe people close to us who help us in some way. But the further you move out, the less value we ascribe to others. And so, just from that basis alone, we know our minds are unrealistic. We value people close to us more than anyone else. I think I've confessed in the past to having these, um, uh, sometimes fantasizing about if I was in charge of everything, like if I ran the whole world, the whole country. First, we'd implement the metric system, and then I have a long list of changes that we'd go through. But the risk with that, of course, is that I'm biased, right? We all tend to be biased towards the people close to us, and that's where you get nepotism and dictators and so forth. So we tend to not have very balanced minds, very self-centered, but we can develop more and more concern for others. And this is what's known as learning to cherish others, learning to care for others. On the basis of caring about others, when we notice that there are sufferings, when we feel that there are sufferings faced by ourselves or others, we develop this mind called compassion. And compassion is the root of this mind that I'll talk about tonight, the supreme good heart. So the supreme good heart has a technical name. It's called bodhicitta. Bodhicitta. It's a Sanskrit word. And it comes from the Buddhist tradition, and the rest of these minds are not necessarily, specific to the Buddhist tradition. This mind, bodhicitta, is bodhi means awakening, and chitta means mind, literally. So, just literally, is a mind that is wishing to awaken ourselves for the benefit of others. And what does this mean? It means that it is a mind that, out of compassion for others, a mind that wishes to help others to become free from their suffering through our developing the wisdom that sees through our own suffering and through others' suffering. So, wisdom has a power to solve problems directly. Right? Sometimes we think that we in our society we value intelligence highly, and intelligence is valuable because it has the potential to solve problems, right? You know how to fix a car. If your car breaks down, maybe you can fix it. These days, um, you can't really you can't really fix modern cars unless you're a computer technician and so forth. But we use our intelligence to solve our own and others' problems. But there's two ways of solving problems. There's solving outer problems through having some knowledge of how things work. But then there's having the intelligence to solve your own problems by knowing how your mind works. And so that's a very special kind of intelligence that we'd categorize as wisdom. Wisdom is the intelligence that knows how to solve our own and others' problems, especially by getting to know how the mind works. It's at least one good approximation of wisdom. So, if we really want to solve our own and others' problems, if we really have compassion for others, compassion will spur us into action, and compassion makes us want to do something to solve our own and others' problems. Now, um, of course, some problems are easier to solve and some are harder to solve. So if if someone that you live with, is hungry, and they say, "Hey, could you bring me some food?" and you're in a good mood, then you can go bring them some food, and you can solve their hunger problem directly, right? Easy to do. Now, we're exposed to an insane amount of information, right? We're exposed to the nightly news, if you want it, social media, and so forth. So there's a huge list of massive catastrophes and smaller crises and problems is basically an overwhelming amount of sufferings and problems that we may become aware of. Now, our ability to solve those problems is um, usually minimal. Um, Maybe sometimes we can make a donation. Um, we can have a mind of concern. Maybe we sign a petition or something like this. But it it these kinds of situations that we're in these days are very hard, I think, on our mental health, right? Because you become aware of a massive array of problems, but your own ability, and sometimes even you have ideas about what a solution might be, um, but your own ability to help these other problems, distant problems, is minimal. And so that creates this feeling of being stuck, right? Some feeling of frustration, some feeling of impotence, right? A lack of power to solve these problems. Um, and even, you know, even closer to home, we can have, our own, if people close to us have serious physical health issues or mental health issues, um, we have friends who are struggling, that also may, it may be something that we feel that we have little or no power to help address. And so, while it is critically important for us to focus on developing a good heart, it's also critically important for us to figure out what to do with that good heart so that we don't feel overwhelmed and overloaded. And there's this term compassion fatigue that sometimes arises, especially in caring professions. Medical workers have been, under enormous stress during the pandemic the last couple of years. A lot of risk of burnout in those professions. And so bodhicitta is a special mind of compassion that gives us a way to take action on our compassion that um, is a bit subtle, but is very powerful. It is the mind of compassion that is determined to build our own wisdom, the mind of compassion that is determined to develop um, the most powerful wisdom we can possibly develop ourselves as a way to help respond to the crises that face ourselves and others. So, bodhicitta is a compassionate mind that strives to develop our own wisdom. And as I said earlier, wisdom has the power to solve our problems directly and to give. So I think you've had experiences, I'm sure you've had experiences where you have an insight where you just think, if I could just hold on to this insight, then I would feel so at peace with my life, right? I would feel so at ease with my life. Among many, many insights that we can develop is that everything that is arising right now in the present moment has come from some causes and conditions, right? No amount of wishing for the present moment to be different than it is can change the way things are right now, if that makes sense, right? Um, it's like uh, it's like the Earth has been shaped by. Um, it's like the Earth has been shaped by these geological forces, right? The heat of the Earth, pressing these plates of the Earth together, forming mountains and these kinds of things. And it has created the landscape of our world. Um, the landscape of our world may not be the way we want it to be, right? But it is arisen through these incredibly powerful forces over a very long time. So, human, our genetics, the way our brains have evolved, the way our societies have evolved, power structures in the world, all of these things have emerged, and there's been, you know, wonderful active actions that have happened in the past, horrible things that have happened in the past, and so forth. But one way or another, we can't change the way things are right now. Any action we would take to help things need to be based on the way the world is right now and figuring out how to work with these systems to move the world in a more beneficial direction. That's one example of a kind of wisdom that can help us to feel more at peace instead of fighting or rejecting. So, but like John said earlier, these insights, when we get a flash of insight, we tend to lose that flash of insight pretty quickly. And that's where and that's literally the purpose of meditation. So there are really three things. There's only three things we need to be focused on in terms of transforming our mind: developing a good heart, um, developing wisdom, and then stabilizing that wisdom through developing stronger concentration or meditation. And meditation is an outgrowth of just building a discipline in our mind. So I mentioned this one kind of wisdom of just accepting the present moment, recognizing that there are causes and conditions that have led to things being the way they are. But there's more. There's other kinds of wisdom that are even closer to home. There's the wisdom that recognizes the various thoughts and feelings that are happening inside of our own mind right now, and is able to sort through the various thoughts and feelings arising in our mind and recognizes that these thoughts and feelings and wishes and so forth, they are not, um, they're changing all the time, but they're not us, right? They are part of the mind, but they're not us. And this is what we call a liberating wisdom, where you begin to get a clarity of what's going on inside your mind as if you were looking inside an aquarium. There's like schools of fishes, some peaceful fish and some sharks and some plants. And so you just see all these forces interacting inside your own mind. So wisdom can look outwardly to try to understand the world. Wisdom can look inwardly to try to understand the different elements that are at play inside of our mind. Now, just as like when we're looking internally, or just like when you're looking inside an aquarium, just to sort of play with this analogy. I've actually never used this analogy before, but just as if you're looking inside the aquarium, you can discern all these different fish and their behavior and their movement and so forth. By the way, 30 minutes ago, I was looking at stock images for fish in aquarium, which is why it's come into my mind. But none of those fish themselves are the aquarium, right? And none of those fish are the water, right? They're all just components. So none of the individual minds that are operating uh, inside the space that we call our mind, none of them are the mind. We have this strong sense, oh, I'm like this, and I'm like that, and I want this, and I want that. But it's actually a terrible description for what's actually going on inside our mind. Um, Inside our mind, it's like uh, it is like a city, right? Where there's all these different voices and different players operating, but we tend to create. There's this voting mechanism that happens inside our brain where we try to create some coherent sense of who we are and what the world is and so forth. But it actually traps us in just one definition of what's going on, and if and we can. This is a little bit subtle to explain how this works, but so imagine this aquarium with all these different fish inside, right? Big aquarium, all these different fishes. So imagine that these are your minds. Some of them are minds of anger, some of the minds of attachment, some of the minds of kindness, some of the minds of boredom, some of the minds of distraction, all of these different players, right? And they're moving in different directions. And normally, we don't have much control over what's going on in the mind. We have disturbing minds that arise. We get jealous when we don't want to get jealous. We get angry when we don't want to get angry. We're attached to things, craving things we would be better off not pursuing. We have wishes or inclinations to engage in hurtful speech, for example, that we know will make our relationships worse. So just even getting to know these minds is one of the most powerful kinds of wisdom we can develop. And then beginning to get some control over the mind, begin to say, I'm going to take charge of what's happening in this space of the mind. I'm going to intentionally cultivate beneficial minds, overcome harmful minds, and doing so with the motivation of compassion, like seeing our mind as the place where we can work, where we can change, where we can cultivate beneficial states, overcome harmful states. All of this feeds into this mind known as bodhicitta. The main thing we're looking to develop eventually is this ability to just completely wake up and begin to see that the inner world and the outer world are closely related. And that by controlling the inner world, you can control your outer world. Um, the the analogy here is of the mind as being like a mirror. So in the mirror, it looks like if you look in a mirror, well, imagine a mirror that's reflecting the whole world around you, right? And it seems like that if you're experiencing suffering, it's because the world outside is a mess, right? But this mirror is reflecting what's going on inside the mind itself, right? It's a reflection of the mind itself. So if if we're able to change the mind, profoundly transform the mind, the world that we experience will change. I think you know that feeling of waking up and feeling like the world is a disaster, right? And you know that feeling of waking up and feeling like the world is okay, right? So is the world changing that dramatically from day to day? It's our mind that changes dramatically from day to day. Um, and so bodhicitta is a mind that is determined to change internally in order to solve our own problems and thereby prove out the ability to help others to solve their problems. Okay, so that's some long prelude. So, what I'd like to invite us to do is to spend a bit of time in meditation for the last 15 minutes or so. And so, with the meditation is an opportunity really for us to begin to become aware of what's going on in the mind and to begin to get um, gradually to be able to get control of what's going on in the mind. So, like this fishbowl analogy or this aquarium analogy, as we're meditating, we'll notice different distractions arise, different thoughts, feelings arise. So, our meditation is an opportunity to become aware of that. But we start just by becoming aware of the body itself. But then gradually, I'll guide us in some meditation on compassion and guide us in meditation on wishing to, on developing bodhicitta, this wish to transform ourselves for the sake of others. Okay, so for the meditation, um, we can find a comfortable position to start and we take a deep breath in and out. We take another deep breath and just invite ourselves to relax. And then another breath, and we just ask ourselves, what is important right now? So, our opportunity in this meditation is to develop a good heart. We can begin, though, simply by stilling and settling our own mind. We can do this by focusing on our breathing, and particularly try to become aware of the sensation of breath at the tip of your nostrils. As we breathe in and out, we try to become and remain aware of the sensation of breath at the tips of our nostrils. So, if we look at our mind, there are so many thoughts emerging, arising, but they're typically arising out of a self concern. To develop a supreme good heart, we need to gradually develop deeper and deeper concern for others. So we bring to mind our social circle, our partners, parents, friends, family. And we develop a feeling of gratitude for all they've done for us. We can develop a deep sense that these people are precious and that their happiness and freedom matters. But we can appreciate that all of these people experience countless problems in their life, pains, fears, difficulties. We know from our own experience that it is possible to develop a wisdom that sees through our own problems. There are times when our mind is clear, at peace, and this is the wisdom that everyone needs. And you try to feel in the depths of your heart that confidence that deep inside our hearts we all have the potential for perfect and complete wisdom, understanding the nature of our own problems, and thereby able to help others to solve their problems. This mind is known as bodhicitta, the supreme good heart wishing to awaken our own wisdom as an antidote to our own and others' problems. within your heart is the potential to completely awaken your wisdom. And cultivating this wisdom is the most compassionate act you could perform. As we draw our meditation to a close, we can recognize that even in this brief time, we have strengthened pathways in our mind for wisdom, compassion, concentration, and that these are the qualities we will need to have the most powerful influence on our society and the people around us. We imagine what it would be like to bring this wisdom to completeness, the full maturation of our wisdom and compassion. And we make a decision to carry this good heart, our peace of mind, and our wisdom into our daily life. And then we can open our eyes and rise from our meditation.